is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the High Lord. I was about to say the Dark Lord. The High Lord by Trudy Canavan, brought to you by Ashleigh. In these chapters, there is a trial. I am really surprised at how everything goes down. And in the end, Sonea and Akkarin are both exiled. And I am left completely unsure what's going to happen next. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. I want to apologize if you guys can hear a background whirring sound in this episode. I have a heater on in my office because it got chilly all of a sudden and it was really cold in here. And I need to invest in one of those heaters that doesn't make any noise, one of those infrared ones. But for right now, I have a blowing, it's basically like having a blow dryer on in the room. Also, I'm sipping tea to keep warm, so forgive me. So these chapters, guys, surprise doesn't even begin to cover it. I was just so completely not ready. I get, if you had pressed me to guess what was going to happen next, I think I would have guessed that Akkarin would expose, or he would tell them what he knew, that he would allow himself to be truth read so that they would know that it was true, and that it would result in bringing in Cery or somebody from the thieves to prove that this was going on, that there was an alliance with somebody else who knew more of the story, to confirm the fact that he wasn't the one that was killing people, that they had spotted a second party out in the streets, that they had basically caught someone else in the act of doing this kind of magic. So that even if Cery, he's in the position where he doesn't exactly know entirely what's going on, he knows a good amount based on his conversation with Savara. So I feel like that would have been what I expected to happen. Now, I would like to say that I understand now why that's not how it went, because in the end, what it comes down to is that Akkarin really wants to keep his alliances secret because he needs people to still fight against these spies. But that's what I guess I kind of figured, in terms of Akkarin's position, that in his eyes, the most important thing would be to create a united front and make sure that all of the magicians knew the truth, and that way they could prepare better. And by prepare, what I really mean is they would finally understand the reasoning for learning black magic. I realize now, Akkarin doesn't plan on having everybody learn to use black magic. I really sort of thought it was going to come to that. I still low-key think it's going to come to that, because here's the thing. He doesn't want to be truth-read because he doesn't want the other magicians to gain the knowledge of how to use black magic. But they have the books now. So I imagine, especially if you're a healer who is used to dealing with the energy, the life energy of people, that you are going to be more adept at learning that sort of thing. Now, granted, only one magician was even allowed to read those books. I think it was it Balkan? So at the moment, what is within those books is still very contained. But I kind of feel like that's the only way this can work out. They're helpless in the face of this knowledge that the Sachakans are going to be coming at them with, unless they up their own game. That's just period, end of sentence. So I'm not really sure, now that Akkarin is being exiled publicly for black magic, what he expects to be able to do, since this is going to confirm to the Sachakans that the guild does not use that kind of magic and is in fact as weak as everybody asserted. I don't know. Like, maybe it's just that Akkarin hadn't... I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what Akkarin expected to happen. And what he could possibly, like... You know, I'm saying that he wanted to protect Cery and the thieves, protect the fact of their involvement in order to keep a network running in the slums so that they could keep an eye on everything. But he seems to believe that the fact that he got framed for the murder of a fellow magician means that they're done sending spies. That this is the final, attempt to undermine everything that holds the guild up, and that this is going to be the final stroke before a direct onslaught on the guild begins. So if he believes that, why keep your contacts in the thieves in play? Why not use them to back you up in your trial, so as to assure everyone that this threat is very, very real? And also, I'd like to comment on the fact that the king was here for this. And the fact that the king has not been involved in this story almost at all. We've heard mention of him. We've heard mention of his opinion on things. We've heard mention of his overreaching authority regarding the purge and his association with that, and the way that he has the final say over the guild. We've heard all of that, but I don't really know what it means that he's here now for the story, because I have to admit a huge amount of suspicion. There is something, I feel like, regarding the king's involvement in all of this that we still don't know. I can't imagine that the king was totally unaware of Sachaka's, rising resistance. And I guess it's not officially Sachaka, since all of these people have been exiled. All of the Ichari are exiled people. But, and that's the question, right? Because there's also a conversation between Savara and Cery where she tells him that there are other nobles trying to tell the Sachakan king to stop it with this practice of exiling people, because everyone knows that these Ichari are out here doing shady shit and starting to become more powerful. And apparently the Sachakan king is in denial about how dangerous they are, and the fact that this tradition of exiling folks to these wastelands isn't effective long term, that it leads to these abuses and these factions of power that could easily depose the Sachakan king, probably. So I'm very curious about what Savara thinks is going to happen, because these people, we expect them to come at the guild. But what if they come at their own king and then the guild? What if they don't approach the guild as renegade magicians? Because if they did that, even though they're allegedly, doing this to kind of avenge Sachaka for the way the guild laid waste to their country, which I really want to know more about exactly what happened there. Even if they came at the guild that way, as renegade magicians intent on vengeance, that is still going to be less of a problem, I feel like, politically, than a group of people who have overtaken the Sachakan government and then come come at Cerelia in this, like, really coordinated, what becomes a, like, sanctioned attack, right? Oh, Ashleigh's here. Hi, Ashleigh. So yeah, if they, I'm theorizing here, Ashleigh, on what the Achari are planning on doing, because I can't help but wonder if they're not going to attack their own king first and gain some real power and influence there before they come at the guild, because they're gonna run out of people to draw energy from, and if they can convince folks to volunteer to be sources of power, they could be, like, practically unstoppable. And if they come at it from like, having performed a coup and overtaken their king, they will be able to retire back to their country after defeating the guild as the supreme country in power. Like, Cerelia feels like Britain in terms of their stature among other countries, that they are, like, considered the central power, especially because the guild is located there. And everyone else is sort of, like, beholden to them in terms of, like, passing, like, clearing it with them, how they handle certain things, because Cerelia is so powerful that they can make trouble for anyone who does things in a way that Cerelia wouldn't really approve of. So if the Sachakans became officially, like, if they were endorsing these Achari, they could take these folks down and then retire to their seat of power and have taken Cerelia's place, essentially. Ashleigh says, interesting, but if the Achani are capable of pulling off a coup, why would they have just been content for their king to exile them until now? I feel like because they weren't sure where the guild stood. I feel like, I mean, yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, that they don't want to take over the Sachakan government for the sake of it. They don't want the Sachakan rule. They want to take down Cerelia. So until they're sure that they can overcome the guild, they're not going to attempt a coup on their own country. It's when they are sure that the guild is weak enough that they know they could do it, then they come at their people to put themselves in a position of strength before striking the guild. At least, if I were in their position, I think that's how I would do it. But I'm also, not a borderline insane rogue magician. So what do I know? And also, there's the question of, if these, the Sachakans function on a whole other, they, as far as I know, right now in this story, there are no Sachakans in the guild at all, right? Not a single solitary one. So, everybody who's exiled is either an Achari or a slave. Like, that's kind of what it breaks down to out in those wastelands, is either you are one of the predators, meaning you are a magician, or you are a slave. Which leads me to believe that there are other magicians in Sachaka that are not exiled, right? Do the Sachakans have an equivalent of their own guild? Do they have any sort of organization? Are they in positions of power? And do the Sachakans, I feel like I remember, and I'll go back to, I'll be flipping through the pages after I finish my initial, thoughts on this. I feel like I remember Savara saying something to Cery about the magicians who are not Achari, that they also perform what she calls the high magic. I mean, she does, right? So maybe, because I'm thinking about these Ichani being able to take down their government so easily, but if they're up against people of their homeland who also perform this magic, maybe it wouldn't be as easy as I think. Or would it be better? Would it be easier? Because they are willing to kill tons of slaves to take as much power as possible. Whereas if you're Savara and you perform the high magic, you're not like killing the people who volunteer their power. So even though they both perform this kind of magic, maybe the Ichani are still in a better position because they are willing to kill, and that, causes them to absorb more power. I'm not really sure, to be honest, what the structural, like what the structure is for their government there. So I don't really know where to go with this theory. I'm just kind of wildly speculating here. So with that, I'm going to begin my actual analysis of these chapters. So we start off with chapter 16, the hearing. And I kind of like this opening because it sort of reads as really strange initially. Sonea's first thought as she began to wake was that Viola hadn't come to wake her and she was going to be late for classes. And I really like that, everything has happened, and yet she's in the middle of this, like, sort of, I don't want to say she's in denial because that's not exactly it. Her mind has not caught up. And I think we've all been places like this, right? Where something has happened and we've spent the night somewhere else and we wake up and we're for a minute just like, wait, where am I? Like you go to roll off one side of the bed, but you're in a different bed, so you can't get off that side. Or you go to reach for the nightstand to grab your phone and you realize the nightstand isn't over there. Actually, your phone is plugged in across the room because there isn't a nightstand. Things like that throw you off from the moment you wake up. And I feel like, as somebody, at least personally, who really appreciates things being planned and organized and having a routine, I cannot emphasize enough how waking up like that throws me off. Like, it'll mess me up for an hour after, So she is thinking about the fact that she killed someone and whether or not she feels guilty about that. And she comes down on the side of, I wish I had not been put in the position where I needed to kill. But I'm not sorry I killed her. I'm not sorry she's dead. And I don't, in my heart, feel like I did anything wrong. And then she sort of asks herself, and I really like this a lot, she sort of asks herself why she's suddenly so preoccupied with whether or not killing is okay, because she knows if she had been in the slums and somebody came at her, she wouldn't think twice about this. That, basically her change in circumstances from finding out that she is a magician, that she can do this sort of thing, that for her changes the whole way she perceives everything. So the fact that she has an advantage over most people changes for her the way that she perceives this murder. But then she has to remind herself that the person she murdered also had magic. So she didn't have an advantage over that specific person, which, therefore kind of rights the playing field right back to where it had been. And I liked the course of this conversation. I like a lot in general when Trudy Canavan shows us the way Sonea's mind works, because I'm mostly gratified when she does this, because it feels like Sonea is really logical and tries to consider things from multiple perspectives. Like, even when she's angry at and doubting people, most of the time she asks the right questions, I feel like. And I think that's probably, in large part due to the fact that she grew up in the slums. Like, there's a certain part of that that's just survival, and then there's a certain part of that that's like an empathy that you learn when you are somebody who is at a disadvantage in society. That's something that I was talking about with a friend, just like, you can tell if you have friends who have money, for example, more than one of them, and some of them grew up with money and have had it always, and some of them came into money via a, successful career. You can tell who is who. I know I have been able to, by how they relate to other people. there is simply a fundamental empathy that people who grew up without have, because they know what it was like to be viewed like a certain way by society and to be in a position to help people now. And I'm not trying to say that if you grew up with money, you're not as good a person. I'm simply saying that you were not in a position where you needed to think about what other people were going through the same way, or you were like aware of what other people were dealing with because you were okay. So it's just I like to think that Sonea's a more thoughtful student than probably a lot of the novices because of where she comes from and what she's gone through. So being in her head and Canavan showing me exactly how she finds her way through certain thought processes and how she considers what's happening and all of the angles, it makes me like Sonea better as a character and trust her decisions more, and just be in general I don't know if you all have ever experienced reading a book where the main character does not at all think the way that you do, but it is incredibly frustrating. And it's the sort of thing that you're yelling at the page, why aren't you asking this question? Or obviously this person is doing this to you. And what is the matter with you? Ashleigh is saying 50 Shades. And honestly, Ashleigh, what I was thinking of as I said this was Twilight. So yeah, there goes a character that I couldn't relate to at all as I was reading, because it seemed like she was willfully misconstruing every single conversation in a way that made no sense to me. And so you'd watch somebody make a bunch of decisions that you would never make based on what felt like nothing, like a personality that simply was not quite up to par, they just didn't have critical thinking skills. That's a very different experience from reading a book with a main character that doesn't think like you, but the author has made it clear why they don't think like you. For example, I covered for the book club the book The Haunting of Hill House, which has a very unreliable narrator because she's a little bit mentally unstable. And in that respect, she makes decisions that I wouldn't make all the time, but I understand it because you also get to see her whole thought process and how different it is from yours. And so even though they're not decisions you'd make, in context, those decisions still make sense for that character. Whereas something like 50 Shades and Twilight, even in context, they don't really. And with Sonea, I just really like the fact that she tends to think in the same ordered way that I tend to think. And so, while not always, there have been a few instances in these books where I've just been like, Sonea, come on, clearly it's not that, it's this. Mostly, I have been appreciative of how willing she is to consider other sides, and she will occasionally even think of something that I hadn't. So anyway, Sonea is she's going into this hearing not really sure exactly what Akkarin's plan is here, and she isn't aware, and we find this out later. She isn't aware of the fact that her power is actually detectable by the other magicians. The power that she absorbed, killing that Ichani woman, is something that she would have to put forth an actual effort to hide, which apparently Akkarin has been doing. And I don't think that any of us were really aware of that as readers up to this point. And I wish Akkarin had mentioned to her that this was something he had been doing, but I'm not sure that, he felt it was going to be necessary quite yet. However, she had killed this woman, and then they were going to, send her to class the next day. So somebody would have noticed. Maybe he was planning on teaching her how to conceal her magic on the, in the basement before, sending her to bed so that she'd be prepared for the next morning. Whatever the case is, because of the fact that her power and the increase in her power is tangible, it gives something away. Because they ask Akkarin point blank, if he has taught her black magic, and he says no. And I don't know if he isn't aware that her power is tangible or what. I feel like he's standing close enough to her that he should be able to tell. And if he's presenting it as, no, I didn't teach her anything, and she was a willing donor of her power to me by other magical means, which is what he tries to say, if she's been donating power to you, why is hers inflated? It would be diminished. So, yeah, I don't feel like Akkarin really thought this one through, or else he doesn't realize exactly how much everyone can sense the increase in power. And I can't imagine that he himself can't sense it. But I don't know. So, Akkarin is obviously the punishment that is on the table for him is execution. And what it looks like he's trying to do throughout this hearing is take on as much of the blame himself as he can, keeping Sonea from being involved almost at all, making her an unwilling pawn, somebody that he began to tell the truth and confided in, but also somebody that he, like, low-key, like, coerced into this position because he's trying to keep her from getting kicked out so that there's somebody at the guild who knows what the fuck is going on and has the power to defend at least a little bit. Martin is saying maybe because he's so much more powerful that he's become nose blind to lesser powers, like double of fuck all still being fuck all. That is a weird way to say that, Martin. I think I get what you mean. One would think having so much power would make you like have a keener sense, because that is in itself a kind of power, being able to sense someone else's, right? So it could be what you're saying, but that feels counterintuitive to me. But who knows? In the end, all it comes down to is just that he really wants her to remain, and he is trying to keep her from getting in trouble. And fucking Sonea, man, she is not interested. Like, she's super... The main thing is that she would have been willing to be an unwilling pawn if it looked like he was actually going to be executed. Because then she'd remain and be able to help. I'm saying that, but, like, she doesn't confess to having been taught black magic and killing this woman until, like, it's not like she waits until after she finds out he's going to be exiled instead. She gives her testimony first, so she doesn't know what's going to happen. But she's not willing to, like, let him take the entire fall. I'm gonna find out. I'm fast forwarding here in the book. Fast forwarding, you like that? Because we have the king arriving and, like, Rothan watching the king and thinking about what Sonea's impression would be to see him here, because, like, the king is responsible for the purge, and obviously she still has some strong feelings about that. So let's see. Oh, I should also add that we find out exactly who that witness, quote unquote, was that the captain questioned, because initially he can't find her and everybody assumes, oh sure, so whoever committed this murder, likely Akkarin, killed that witness, which didn't make any sense. It turns out that the Ichari woman that Sonea killed murdered a young girl, took her clothes, dressed up, and approached the captain as a witness, and then disappeared. And they know that is what happened because they find two bodies. the Achari woman and the young girl whose family identifies her. And the Achari woman is holding the knife, like she has it with her, the knife that she described to the captain. So it becomes pretty clear quickly to at least all the magicians that matter that something fucking hinky is going on here. Like there was some sort of setup. At the very least, the witness was lying and wasn't who she said she was. Whether or not this was a false flag planted by Akkarin or not, it casts a lot of problems, a lot of doubt on the credibility of the witness and potentially witnesses in the future. And that's why some people are questioning whether or not Akkarin didn't put a fake witness in place in order to undermine all future witnesses, which honestly is so next level paranoid that I'm almost impressed. It's the kind of next level paranoid that for me feels like that seems a little extra. Do you really think he'd do that? And then on the other hand, I'm kind of like, ooh, but if he were the crazy murderer, maybe he would. You know, Akkarin's a smart guy. It's sort of reminding, like, there was something recently where those of you who remember what was going on with Brett Kavanaugh, who was going to be confirmed to the Supreme Court, and there were accusations brought against him of sexual assault and attempted rape. And there was one woman who came forward and claimed that he had raped her in the back of a car. And that woman later confessed that she had made it all up. And I took the position of next level paranoia on that one. I feel very much like that woman was put in place to bring accusations and then admit to lying in order to undermine the credibility of all the other women who came forward. And I think it worked. Unfortunately, because people are very willing to discount women when it comes to accusations of assault. It's just, women are not believed almost ever. It's always like there's always suspicion on that. So it's very easy to undermine that, especially if there's one woman you can point to as having definitely lied and she's admitting right now that she lied. And, you know, I feel like it worked. I mean, he got confirmed. Nobody seemed to care. So I feel like if this were a different situation, their concerns about that, I would be like, oh my God, that's a pretty good point, actually. We know that that's not what happened, but I'm kind of impressed that they like thought that far ahead and thought it through that much. So anyway, yeah, that whole thing happened with the witness. So we have Lord Balkan testifying about, you know, finding the bodies. We have Lady Benara come up and talk about like the way that they were killed. And I would like to also point out that when Balkan fucking goes to the home, he finds 20, I think he says 29 people murdered. It was, let's see. I'm trying to find the exact moment. It's so many more people than I thought. I really was not ready for that number. I thought the man, his family, and a couple of servants. I'm trying to find the number, but it's something like that. And I was just like, what? It's just such a bigger household than I ever expected. Sorry, I'm just trying to... Yeah, here it is. When I arrived at Lord Jolin's family home, I examined the bodies of 29 victims. 29 victims. Like, Jesus Christ. No, that woman must have been buzzing with power. And now, almost all of it is in Sonea. Like, alright, you know? So, let's see. Oh, and then we have Rothan watching all of this, and of course being absolutely, like, fucking heartbroken about what's going on with Sonea. And Rothan feels, like, sort of responsible, because what he feels like is that Sonea was really suspicious of the guild in general when she was first convinced to join. And he convinces her to give them a chance. Not everything is the way that it looks. I know that you have a perception of them from growing up where you did, but that might not be entirely accurate. Yada, yada, yada. And he feels like she took what she took the advice that he gave her and sort of used that same mindset in approaching Akkarin, and so entertained his black magic like suggestions and notions in a way that she might not otherwise have done if she had not always been so encouraged to give things a chance. Which I think is awfully adorable, that Rothan thinks that she would have gone, like, there's just Rothan, come on. He's trying to come up with any sort of reason that he himself can take responsibility for some of this, because he doesn't want to believe that Sonea could be a bad person. And for him, that's the only alternative. Doing black magic to him is an abomination. It is taking advantage of like, human life in a way. And practicing it is inexcusable. So he has one of two options. She was just drawn into this like unwittingly, or she's doing this because she enjoys it. And he's sure fucking not going to consider that second one. So it has to be the first one. And like, it's sort of sweet in a way, you know, but also really frustrating, because I'm just like, dude, it's so not about you or about her not getting it. Like, the way that you and Lorelyn both reacted when you saw her memories really is it's a perfect indicator of exactly how she should approach this. It's not like coming to the guild where she feels like she has a prejudice against magicians, but everybody else here is participating in this, and not all of them seem to be evil, so maybe there's something there. She has the laws of the guild against her. She has both you and Lorelyn looking horrified at her memory. She wouldn't have been drawn into this, like, because she gave it a chance when she should have. She knows better. She's not stupid. But, you know, Rothan's just trying to give her a break, I guess. All right, so here we go. Oh, yeah, and Rothan comes forward and talks about how years ago they knew that Akkarin had been dealing in dark magic. And both Lorelyn and Akkarin are irritated because he promised that he wouldn't come forward and say anything at all. But he's doing this because he's worried about Sonea, so he breaks his word. And that puts them in a weird position where, you know, just, he's trying, again, Rothan is trying to make it that Sonea is a hostage. She's not a participant. And it does seem to help. People look at her a little bit differently. You can see it in their faces that there's a sudden sympathy there. That she, and, you know, we had Lord Austin, I think, from, like, the end of last chapter, saying, like, he has perceived that Sonea hates her guardian. So it would all tie together and make a lot of sense. So Akkarin tells them, he finally takes the stand, so to speak, and tells them all about being a slave and everything that happened. And let's see. I followed the case closely and disguised myself so I could enter the slums where the murders had taken place to question and listen. Tells the whole thing. What did you do with the slave you found in the city? Lorelyn asked. Sonea looked back down at the administrator, then at Akkarin. I could not set him free to continue preying upon the people of Imardin, Akkarin said. Nor could I bring him to the guild. He would relay everything he saw, including our weaknesses, to Kariko. I had no choice but to kill him. In the last 5 years, I have tracked down and killed 9 of these spies. Through them, I have seen Kariko's attempts at uniting the Ichani fail twice. This time I fear he will succeed. The last spy he sent was no slave. She was a Chani, and had no doubt read Lord Jolin's mind, and learned all that I hoped to prevent the Sachakans from discovering. If she had made Jolin's death look natural, and left his family and servants alive, none of us would have thought to question it. I might not have realized the Achani knew the truth about the guild. Instead, by trying to make it look as though I killed him, she has forced me to reveal the existence of the Achani to you. I only wish that was to your advantage. Which, I do wonder what he means by that, because I feel like it is to their advantage to know, but I guess he feels like it's too late. So let's see. So then they ask, why he didn't tell them all of this before. It was too great a risk. If I was publicly accused of using black magic, the Achani would learn of it and know Kariko was right. If I managed to convince you of the truth, you might decide that learning black magic yourselves was the only way to protect Curalia, and I would not have that on my conscience. Guess what? It is the only way to protect Curalia. And it blows my mind a little bit that he doesn't see this is inevitable and not necessarily evil. That bothers me a little bit, I have to admit. He has been using a willing volunteer, and that is how it used to be in the guild. Now, granted, one man lost his mind and killed thousands of people and animals in an attempt to overtake everybody. Granted. But the thing is, people are people. And any kind of power, it has the potential to be abused. You can't just keep something like this away from the population because you're afraid the wrong person's going to get his hands on it. It's just a risk that you kind of have to take. It's like you have to arm soldiers, even if one of the soldiers among your crew is not a great guy, or is a little bit unbalanced, or, is maybe a traitor. You still have to arm your people. And regular magic is obviously the equivalent of a fucking water pistol compared to what everybody from Sachaka has. So I just wish that he would get over it. He keeps calling it black magic too instead of high magic because of what he's seen, because of the circumstances of being a slave and watching those slaves be indiscriminately murdered by power-hungry Achari. Would he feel this way if he were privy to other traditions in Sachaka and the way that other magicians operate, and he saw... I want to think yes, but he read the books about Curalia and the guild before they stopped using black magic, and that hasn't seemed to change his mind, even though the guild had been working fine using that magic for hundreds of years before hitting somebody who was completely out of his mind. And there is nothing to guarantee that this isn't going to happen again, except that it'll be somebody from outside the country who lays waste to everything. This is almost reminding me of the Cold War, and everybody getting their fucking weapons stockpiled and eyeballing the other, wondering who's going to use it first, except that it's us watching Russia stockpile atomic and nuclear weapons, and we won't do it at all because we know they're bad. That doesn't feel that's not proactive or logical or anything. So I'm getting a little irritated with Akkarin on this whole thing. Let's see. Reading about it is one thing. Being enslaved for it for 5 years is something else. Yeah, I mean, it just... I get that, but he's using it with a volunteer. He has to know this is possible. He can't see himself as the sole exception. I don't know. I just find it really frustrating that he didn't even want to teach Sonea. He's using magic he's using a type of magic knowing it is literally the only way to overcome their enemies. He is using this magic with the belief that he can continue being the only one and somehow defeat a whole crew that is about to come at them at any moment. And there is something really arrogant about that. It's an arrogance both in that he doesn't believe other people can handle this knowledge, and also an arrogance in thinking that he is like ordained, that he's in a position where he should do this without telling anybody else about it. What gives him that position other than having been enslaved and knowing about it and no one else knows? That's literally circumstantial. There is nothing about him that makes him more worthy to wield this kind of magic than anyone else, except the circumstances he found himself in accidentally because he was a foolish boy who wandered into an area that he should not have gone. And that's not enough, and he has to start to, like, fucking look at that, you know? That he just started to teach Sonea because he was like, all right, but you have to promise not to use it unless you, like, absolutely have to, or never use it at all. And it's like, you know, what, he gets to decide that Sonea's worthy of knowing this? Like, the only thing I can say is treat it like I want gun control to be treated, which is give people, like, basic psychiatric evaluations before you begin to teach it and make sure they're not, you know, having this, like, power-hungry latent energy that's going to go nuts when they start to get their hands on this kind of power. But otherwise, you just kind of have to accept that this is out there and, like, be smart about it. You know? I don't know. So anyway, Lord Saren's the one that was reading the black magic books. So let's see. Ashleigh says, the thing is, it's presumably easier to disarm someone with a gun than it is to disarm someone who's using a power that's part of who they are. And with the politics going on in the guild, the political politics, it seems like it'd be difficult to convince the guild to do something as irreversible as binding his powers. I'm sure it'd bring all those, think of what it'd do to his life/career assholes. It's presumably easier to disarm someone with a gun than it is to disarm someone who's using a power that's part of who they are. Presumably, but I don't, like, we haven't actually seen that. So I don't know how that works. So I'm not willing to make that kind of assumption. Presumably you're probably right, but I don't know that, and we've never seen anybody, like, have their powers dampened or anything. It'd be difficult to convince the guild to do something as irreversible as binding his powers. And they wouldn't do that because they're not sure he's lying at this point, right? So, which, thank goodness that they're willing to even look into this. But the fact that they're willing to exile him to a place that they know he is, like, fighting against, at least in his estimation and his story that he's telling them, while they investigate this, feels so, like, backwards. I mean, binding his powers is one thing. You can get every magician in the guild to contribute to creating a prison that he couldn't break out of. You know, he's got enough power that he's supposed to be, like, equivalent to, like, 20 magicians. Fine, get 50. Create something. I don't really mean Akkarin. I more so mean someone like Fergan who'd absolutely abuse that ability. Okay, so you think that they wouldn't be willing to do something like bind Fergan's powers? I don't know. Like, see, and this is straying into a hypothetical that I'm not even going to, like, comment on, because there's just, I mean, Fergan has already done plenty of damage with just the power that he had over regular people. And I don't, like, they only exiled him, even though he was, like, gonna fucking kill Cery. So it comes down to, for me, a feeling of the magicians not really willing to, like, they're not willing to look at this, quote, high magic in an objective way because they all believe that it's evil. But when somebody actually does something that I think is objectively evil with the power that they all have, Like, keep someone trapped somewhere to blackmail another person in order to discredit her entire class of people. They're not willing to hold them accountable. So I just basically, it comes down to, I don't trust the magicians, like, right and wrongs. They don't seem to be focused on the right things when they make their decisions. Which is why I think they wouldn't take more serious measures if Fergan did abuse black magic and this power was normalized. I mean, but the thing is, there are already people out there doing this kind of thing. So, like, you're just letting them get away with that? You know, we have these people creating, like, tiny black holes of power in the wastelands with these slaves that they're killing. Like, I don't know. It's sort of a cyclical thing. But I just find it like I said, have people take like a friggin' psychiatric evaluation. I have a feeling Fergans would turn up some red flags, so you don't teach it to him, you know? Like, Akkarin's just, and also I feel like Akkarin could have had more effect on what happened to Fergan, and he didn't. And I'm also side-eyeing him, because he should have just fucking killed that guy. But, you know, I guess politically that probably wasn't an option, but, like, seriously, they let him get away with too much shit. So let's see. After a battle, a black magician is weaker. A smart attacker would kill the slaves first. Which I'm just like, Jesus Christ. Like, they're not wrong, but it sucks for the fucking slaves that they're dead either way. Why haven't we heard of these Achani before? Merchants travel into Sachaka every year. They have occasionally reported meeting magicians in Arvis, but not black magicians. Which, these magicians are using this high magic all the time, so we find out. So why don't they know it? Are they keeping it secret, or did they just, like, think black magicians were going to be walking around in, like, you know, swirling clouds of black smoke? Why do these Achani want to invade Kireli? Excuse me. Akkarin shrugged. Many reasons. The main one, I suspect, is to escape the wastes and regain status and power in Arvis, but I know some desire to take revenge for the Sachakan War. So they talk about how to confirm the truth, and ask if he would submit to a truth read, and he won't, because he doesn't want them to figure out how to do black magic, which I'm just like, dude, you just need to fucking let them do a truth read. Like, you just need to get over it. Seriously. Get over it. They're gonna figure it. They have the books. If it's gonna happen, you just need to, like, let them see that this is an actual danger. I feel like the potential for somebody to figure out how to use black magic is much less a worry than that they won't believe that Kielaria is in danger in the first place. And he's not prioritizing well here at all. So, this is when he tells them that Sonea was never taught. And she's looking at him like, what the fuck? Why are you lying to them? And so let's see. The only way she could save Akkarin was to reveal her own use of black magic. So this is, okay. This is the thing I'm a little confused on. She had been his hostage. She had been deceived into helping him. The guild might even pardon her. She had, after all, only read a few books, and then only at the instigation of Akkarin. She frowned. This made Akkarin look worse, however, and he was encouraging them to see things that way. Since she had first learned of the Achani, she had nursed the hope that the guild, if it learned the truth, would pardon him. But now she wondered if Akkarin had ever considered that a possibility. If he wasn't hoping to be pardoned, what was he planning? Surely he didn't mean to let them execute him. No, if it came to that, he would fight his way out and escape. Would he make it? She considered again how much of his power the fight with the Achani woman must have used. Her heart began to race as she realized he could easily be too weak to escape the guild, unless she gave him all her strength, including that which she had taken from the Achani woman. All she had to do was touch him and send him the power. The warriors surrounding them would try to stop her. She would have to fight them. When they did, however, they would realize she was using more power than she ought to possess, and then they would not be at all inclined to pardon her. So the only way she could save Akkarin was to reveal her own use of black magic. So, okay, let me talk this through. I'm like almost at my time here, and I've in general terms talked about what happens in the rest of these chapters, but like what she thinks is that she has to admit that she learned black magic, because if she gives Akkarin power to escape and fights against them, they will figure it out anyway. Which that's logic that I don't follow. She could, like, if they figure it out anyway, either way, they'll know you've been using it and they're going to do something, and you've just fought against them. They're gonna kill you. Like, that would be what they would do. They would execute you. Not because you were lying, but because you just used black magic to fight them and try and free Akkarin. The fucking lie isn't the focus anymore, girl. Obviously. But she's like turning it into like, well, I have to tell the truth now, or it'll bite me in the ass later if there's a hypothetical break for escape. Which doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not really getting where, like, how her mind is jumping to that as being an inevitability here. And even if it were an inevitability, why it's more important for her to not lie here than it is to not help him fucking escape. But whatever. Okay, so she tells them that he didn't murder that family. Let's see. She's assuming that Akkarin won't let himself be killed. No, I know. I know that. I just read that. I'm saying that even if she knows that she's not going to let himself be killed, she would help him. So they would find out that she's like doing black magic anyway. Either way. So why does she feel the need to confess now? When later, by the time they realize that she was lying, she will also have assisted in letting this black magician go. She would be his accomplice. So that's way more trouble than she would be in from lying, because this way doesn't involve her fighting them. But she'd still have to give him her power. The whole thing is about her giving power to him to escape. How does confessing keep him from fighting them? Like, he's going to be in more trouble from teaching her than he would be. I don't understand how her confessing keeps him from, like, just trying to escape. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly of the mind that she is, that, like, he would try and fight his way out the way that she thinks he would. I mean, he probably would, but I feel like he's trying to play this in a different way. But whatever the case, I'm just not really following what she thinks the alternative is here. That confessing is going to somehow keep him from trying to escape. Her confessing isn't going to change. It's going to make him look bad because he just said that he didn't teach her. So this undermines him. He swore to tell the truth, and she's outing him as lying. It changes her from an unwilling slave to willing participant. But that doesn't change what they are going to do to him. Take some of the charges from himself to her. Maybe the lesser charges warrant death. I don't understand how that changes anything. Maybe the lesser charges don't warrant death. I don't feel like the lesser charges, even the lesser charges are still, I practice black magic, I taught her black magic, I lied about teaching her black magic. That's still all punishable by death. We know this. That's an absolute law. So what she's doing doesn't actually change anything. It might, I don't know. The explanations that you're all giving feel totally irrelevant to me. And obviously, it seems like they're relevant in her mind, but I don't see why. Well, what else can she do? It's better than nothing. I don't feel like it's better than nothing. Yeah, Akkarin said that learning black magic by itself, never mind using it, is punishable by death. Exactly. And say it's better than nothing. Like, is it? I feel like not making him look like a huge liar who's teaching her black magic against the recommendations of the guild is not better than nothing. It's much worse. I don't understand her decision in doing this. She could still have, like, been exiled with him if she chose. By the end, she could still have gone with him. It doesn't play into what happens in the end anyway. I just really don't understand her method here at all. And they ask her if she learned it willingly. Yes, when the High Lord was injured, I realized there would be nobody with the ability to continue fighting if he died. Lorland glanced at Akkarin. Now there won't be. His words sent a chill down her spine. Clearly, Lorland had understood what Akkarin had been trying to do. Knowing that she had been right in her suspicions gave her only a bitter satisfaction. Looking at Akkarin, she was shocked to see the anger in his face. She quickly looked away. I said I would do as he instructed. She felt doubts beginning to gather. Was I wrong? Did I just ruin some plan I wasn't clever enough to see? But surely Akkarin had realized she would understand that he was sacrificing himself so that she could remain in the guild. He must have considered that she might refuse to abandon him. It's just like, girl, you didn't have to abandon him. You didn't have to tell everybody he was lying in order to, like, whatever. Okay, so, I feel a little better, though, that you guys can't really justify this in a way that's compelling to me, because it makes me feel like I didn't, like, miss something. It's that Sonea's not making a lot of sense here. So then finally, Balkan seems to, like, catch on to the weirdness in how she's acting when they ask her if Akkarin killed that Ichani woman. And Balkan straight up asks her, well, did you kill her? And she's like, yes. And everybody's like, holy shit, what? And that was another thing that I didn't expect, was for her to admit to having murdered somebody using black magic, because that's like a whole other deal. This isn't just like, oh yeah, I was a hostage and yeah, I learned it. It's, oh yeah, I definitely committed murder, which is just, damn. So I'm out of time here because there was so much to talk about, but I still feel like I basically was able to cover every single thing that winds up happening, except for what's going on with Daniel, which boils down to Rothan is impressed because Daniel obviously has a lot more, like, confidence than he used to have. Nobody seems to believe, like, the scandal about Rothan and Tyen, so he seems sort of safe there. And Daniel is obviously on Sonea's side, because when they have to perform the exile ceremony where they come up and tear her robes, he doesn't tear them, and neither does Rothan. And I appreciated that from both of them. So when they're exiled, she gets taken out on a horse along with Akkarin to the border, and they're given clothes to change into. Nor does the librarian woman, I can't remember her name. Oh, she doesn't? I didn't even notice that. That's kind of nice, too. But yeah, so they get given clothes so that they don't look like a couple of guild magicians walking right the fuck into Sachaka, which feels like the bare minimum that these people should have thought of, but okay. I guess we have to tell you what to do with this now. And Cery is talking with Savara about what's going on now that, like, because he thinks that she can still carry on killing the spies that come in, but she's like, no, the only reason I was able to keep on doing that was because Akkarin was still active, killing them himself, and I was keeping hidden, so they would still think it was him doing it. I would just have more of an advantage than him. Now that he has been outed as a black magician, and that being a bad thing, and is being exiled, if those spies start turning up dead still, they're going to know somebody else is involved, and they're going to figure out that I'm missing, or figure out that some woman has been spotted or whatever, and they'll know of my involvement, and that's the whole thing we're trying to avoid. So I'm going to have to go home. And that's pretty much where we leave it with them. So, yeah. I don't know what's going to happen next. And don't get me wrong, like, in terms of storyline, I prefer everybody knowing that Sonea learned black magic, and I prefer them knowing that she murdered somebody. Like, I find that to be an interesting little wrinkle. I just don't really get her reasoning in that scene for telling them the truth about it. So let's see. So a few episodes ago, you said you didn't think it would end up with a full-scale war with the entire guild versus Ichani. What do you think now? I still don't really think that. because I feel like if it came down to that, the book would be much longer. But then I'm realizing I'm reading an ebook, and I don't know how long this book is. So I don't know. I still don't really think that's what's going to happen. But if it is, I'm down. I'm not saying I don't think it's going to happen because I don't want it to happen. But it just doesn't feel like that kind of book. Everything is so personal, and all the POVs are so like they're so focused that starting to get into like an epic battle doesn't feel like the tone this book is in. But I could be wrong about that. All right. Well, I have another one coming up next. I have to do Deadwood, so I'm going to have to let you all go. So how do you think the Ichani will react now that they know the guild is weak? Well, I was theorizing in the beginning that I feel like they're going to go after their own king. And maybe they won't, but I kind of feel like they're not going to hit the guild just as a little... I mean, or maybe they are, and they're thinking that, oh, we can take over Kyralia and then hit Sachaka from the position of being like, you know, in charge in Kyralia because we've killed the king of Kyralia, which I guess is a possibility. I feel like I feel like story-wise, it's going to matter more for them to go after the guild, so that's probably what's going to happen first. I think they should go after their own people, because that's unexpected. But also, if there are a bunch of people who are also practicing high magic, then maybe they're not going to have much of an advantage there, so that wouldn't make sense. So probably the guild. But we'll see. Or maybe it's just going to be a battle against fucking Akkarin and Sonea out in the desert, which... You know, that feels more appropriate to the tone of the book if it's just the two of them against everybody. But also, there's no fucking way they make it, right, against all these people unless they hit them like one by one and manage to sort of smoke them out. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's it. Go to the source of the trouble, right, rather than waiting for the trouble to come to you. All right, everybody. Well, thank you all very much for coming and talking to me and giving me your arguments on this, even though I don't believe them. I appreciate the input, even though I am going to completely ignore it. And thank you very much to Ashleigh for commissioning this, and I'm very curious what's coming up next. I really don't have any idea. I guess we'll see. And yeah, until then, guys, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.